In this video, we will talk about modifying sales and purchase vouchers so that it includes GST ledgers by default. So every time when you record sales, normally we record the items and then we select the GST ledgers. But now what we are going to do is we will modify the vouchers itself so that we are just required to enter the items which we purchase or sell, and CGST, SGST and IGST ledgers would be calculated automatically. And the concept that you are going to learn today is referred as voucher classes in Tally. Now in order to modify a voucher in Tally, you need to select the option Accounts Info, which is the topmost option, and then select the option Voucher Types, and then select the option Alter, and from the list of voucher types select the voucher which you want to modify. Since I want to modify sales ledger, I will select that voucher over here. Now at the voucher type alteration screen, you need to click on the field name of class, and over here specify the name of your voucher. So I'm going to create a voucher for local sales which will include default ledgers for CGST and SGST. Therefore, I will name my modified voucher as local sales and press the enter key. Now in the voucher type screen, you would be presented with few fields, and the first field exclude these groups. So in this field, if you specify any of these groups, then any ledger created under these groups would not be available for selection in sales voucher. And usually we set this option as end of list. That means that we are not going to specify any groups to exclude while using sales voucher. And similarly for the field include this group, if you want to specifically include any groups and its ledgers, then you can specify the group over here, but normally we do not specify anything over here and select the option end of list. Now in the field ledger name, select the sales account ledger that you want to account for while using this voucher class, and leave these options to default. Now here is the important thing. Now over here in the field additional accounting entries, here you need to specify what default ledgers you want to include while using your sales voucher. I want to include a ledger to calculate CGST, so I'll select it over here. I also want to include a ledger for SGST calculation, so I will select that as well. And I want to include a ledger called round off, so I'll select it over here and specify its calculation method as total amount rounding, and specify the rounding method and the rounding limit. So we know that we created all the three ledgers, CGST, SGST and round off. We just need to select them and specify it over here. And after including all the required ledgers that you want to include in this sales voucher, press Ctrl A, and then press Ctrl A again to save the voucher alteration. So we just modified the sales voucher such that it will include the GST ledgers and the round of ledgers whenever we make local sales. Now let me show you how it works. Now let me try to pass a sample sales entry by going into accounting vouchers, and I am already in the sales voucher. I will press the F8 key again, which is for sales voucher. Now I would be prompted to select the voucher which I want to use. So I want to use the modified sales voucher which I just created. So I will select the voucher over here which is local sales. So you can see over here the ledgers CGST, SGST and round off would be present by default. Now let me just pass a sample sales entry. So let me just enter any reference number, select the buyer and press Ctrl A to skip this step. Specify the items which I am selling, assuming that I am selling 15 units of chairs at 1500 rupees and 45 paise. then you can see that the GST calculation is happening automatically. So you can see that we are no longer required to specify CGST, SGST and round off ledgers every time you record a sales entry. So in this way it becomes time saving to include the ledgers for GST and round off, and by using the voucher classes like local sales or interstate sales, we can ensure that we are including the right GST ledgers. Like for local sales, we know that we need to use CGST and SGST ledgers, and for interstate sales we use IGST ledgers. So this way we reduce our chances of mismatch for GST calculation. Now let me show you how to create a voucher class to include IGST ledger. Again we follow the same process by selecting accounts info, selecting vouchers type, select the option alter, specify the voucher that you want to modify, and click on the field name of class and press the down arrow key and specify the name of your modified voucher. So let me now specify the name of the class as interstate sales. Now over here you can specify your options, specify the sales ledger that you want to account for recording sales transactions using this voucher. Now I want to include IGST ledger by default, so I will specify that ledger over here along with the round off ledger. Specify the calculation method, rounding method and rounding limit, and save the voucher class creation. Now let's go back to the sales voucher and try to record an interstate transaction for sales. So at the sales voucher, we are right now in local sales voucher. Press the F8 key so that we can select our newly created sales voucher class. So let me select it. Now you can see that the ledger IGST and round off are available by default. And let me just record the same entry which we recorded for local sales. And you can see that IGST and round off are getting auto calculated. So what you saw was modification of sales voucher. Similarly, we can modify purchase vouchers so that it can include default ledgers for GST calculation. And in order to do that, you need to select the purchase voucher instead of selecting sales voucher. Specify the name of your class and specify the GST ledgers and the ledgers that you want to include by default while using this voucher, and then press Ctrl A to save the details. Now when you try to record a purchase entry by pressing the F9 key, you would be presented to select the class which you created. So when you select it, you can see the changes in the vouchers, that it includes default ledgers for GST and round off calculation. Now you can also make use of voucher class to make bank payments. So there are some payments which you make only through bank and not through cash, and you want to ensure that whenever you make payment towards such expenses, bank ledger should be selected. Now in order to have such setting, we modify the payment voucher by going to accounts info, voucher types, alter, select the payment voucher and specify the name of the class as bank. You can name it anything, and over here in the ledger name select the bank account ledger and save the voucher alteration. Now let me just pass an entry for expense towards fuel and rent, and I want to ensure that the payment should go through bank and not through cash. So I'll select the accounting vouchers option over here and press the F5 key. Now I am required to specify my voucher class, which is the bank class, and you may notice that the bank account ledger is selected by default as soon as we specified our voucher class, because in our voucher class we included that bank ledger. Now I am just required to specify the expense ledgers like rent expense, fuel expense and so on. And you may notice that the bank ledger is showing its updated amount that earlier it was 50,000 and after recording expense for rent and fuel it would be 47,000 rupees, and then you can press Ctrl A and save this payment voucher entry. So in this way you can make use of voucher class in order to modify any vouchers, and there won't be any impact on default vouchers. And if in case if you want to use the default voucher, press the F5 key again and select the option not applicable in case if you do not want to use any voucher classes. And now you would be in default payment voucher. I hope you understand the concept of voucher classes, where essentially you are modifying a voucher to include default ledgers.